So today I'm here with Giten Tonkov, who is the director and creator of the Biodynamic Breathwork and Trauma Release Institute, a certified breath and body orientated therapist. Giten, thanks for coming and speaking to me today.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So can you just give us a little bit of a brief history of what brought you into doing the Biodynamic Breathwork and Trauma Release?
I started as a massage therapist in '94 and was working with massage therapy for a while in New York City. And then I went in late '90s. I went to Pune and at the Osho meditation resort, and there I experienced a breathwork session, which completely blew my mind. And since that first moment experiencing breathwork, I wanted to work with it because I saw the power of it. And over the years, I took more courses and trainings and started being interested in the trauma release, which is kind of still a new emerging field in the work with the body. And it made perfect sense to start to combine the foundation of the trauma release and working with breath work, which sometimes can be cathartic and reactivating for the system. So I wanted to find a way where working with breath could be a little less activating. So over the years experimenting, putting different modalities together, seeing what works, what doesn't, and this came about. And this was my path also in my own personal growth, in working on myself and taking different courses and trainings to see what it kind of organically evolved through my journey.
And for those who haven't heard of it before, can you explain a little bit about the process of what biodynamic breathwork and trauma release is?
Sure. Biodynamic breathwork and trauma release consists of 6 elements. So first one is breath. So we use the breath to activate the system, because breath is energy. The deeper we breathe, the more energy we have in the body. So we use the breath to activate the sympathetic nervous system, which is foundation because we need to activate the system so we have something to work with. The second one is touch, the second element. So bringing the touch in the form of light touch, in the form of body work, to support the body to open. So the breath and this energy that's been created by breath can move into meridians, can open the body more physically. The third element is movement. So when the breath charges the body, when the system is fully activated, we need to create space for movement to arise. Is a lot of the times I see people in the workshops, they're breathing, but they're so tight, so there's no movement in the body. So we want to support that with conscious movement, with a particular movement of the spine. There's also tension release exercises, which we activate the lower part of the body in tremoring. So we use movement in a constructive way to support the movements of energy. The next element that supports that is sound. So we use external sound in form of instruments and music which affects the emotions, and also sound in the form of the voice, that people can use their own voice to create an opening in the throat and the mouth, and just general opening in the body. Vibration from the voice affects the vibration of the cells in the body. It's the closest instrument that we have, is our voice. The next element is emotional expression, because all of these elements that I named earlier, they support the opening of the emotional body. All the restriction, all the muscular tension that we carry, they store emotions in them. So once we start to open that, once we start to open deep core tension that lives in the body, all the emotional charge that is associated with that tension starts to come up to the surface. And the next element is the meditation. Meditation is needed to integrate that whole experience. Everything that happens need to settle so the person can look at themselves objectively. And so people don't get stuck in the story. And because being stuck in the story perpetuates the trauma. People think of themselves as a victim, or this is something that doesn't really support people on the healing process. There's another two very important aspects that we bring into this work is called the felt sense, which is we use this sense, the sense of personal physical awareness, so we can stay present to the process. What happens during the trauma? A person gets too much activated, overcharged, and there's a tendency to check out, to escape, to dissociate. So what we're doing, that we're charging enough, not to overcharge, charging enough so the person can stay with that charge without being overcharged, without reconnecting too much with the past trauma. So in this process, the tension that's been trauma related starts to release from the body. And we go deeper and deeper with that. And the next aspect that we bring in is a resource. We support people to find a place of safety in their physical body, where they feel safe during the session, so they can come back to this place anytime when they feel this too much, when they're getting overcharged. So this moving between the charge, the activation, and the resource during the session, and staying present to whatever is happening, emotional expression, the movement, the touch, staying present to all of this supports the trauma release.
So it's a really deep process and a really well thought out kind of method of allowing people to create change, but in a way that isn't then going to leave them kind of vulnerable and exposed when they go back out into the world.
Yeah, absolutely. It brings them back into their body. It creates a container, rather expands the container that they can be with whatever is happening in their life without being overwhelmed by it. All the overwhelm comes from past traumas that get reactivated, and people slip back into this activation, which does not really support the healing. And once they're in that activation, then there's not much they can do about it. So really learning how to gauge how much is enough. So it really leaves people with the ability, when they leave, with the ability to be present with whatever without slipping back into the past reactions.
And do you think that all of this stored trauma that people have from the past is one of the reasons why they're so dissociated from their bodies?
Absolutely. This is precisely the reason, because when people start to first check in with themselves and they find all this tension, it's too much to handle. So it's a natural process for the body to dissociate. If it's too painful, we check out, we dissociate. And this is what's happening. And people dissociate not only by numbing themselves, but they dissociate by going into addictive behaviors, to alcohol, to drugs, to compulsive behaviors, to bad relationships where they feel stuck. So this is a way to dissociate. So there are many, many ways to do that. So this is what this work supports people to do, is to come back to sensitivity, but in a gentle way.
So why do you think there's been such an increase in both awareness and demand for this over the last kind of 10 years or so?
In my understanding, there is a lot more body awareness in the media, and people start to really bring awareness to themselves thanks to popularity of yoga or of various body-oriented modalities of meditation. So it's people start to really question what is happening with them. Before it was kind of under wraps or not popular, and people didn't know that this actually exists. so emergence of this, that's what's supporting people. But another thing is I feel that people are overstimulated these days with so much people using the phones and information constantly coming from every angle. Everywhere you look, there's a billboard, a flashing sign, or Facebook post. So there's overstimulation, and that's also numbing. So people trying to find somehow, consciously or unconsciously, their way out of it.
Do you think that with the popularity of practices like yoga, which have led to almost watered down versions of complete practices, although they're bringing the awareness into the body because they're not so complete, they're not really enabling people to deal with the stuff that's then coming up from the practice?
Yes, that's true. I find that what is passable under the term yoga is really not yoga at all. It's just a physical workout which is used the word yoga, but it's there are kind of a production line popping out yoga teachers in every country because it's so popular, and these yoga teachers are not prepared to deal with emotional charge that comes when you start to open up the muscular tension. So when the teacher is not prepared to support a student with that, what does the student do? They close back up again, and they pretend it didn't happen. So it's great that yoga is popular, but also it's really, in my opinion, it's not a path for spiritual growth, and it should be viewed as a workout and not a path for a spiritual growth in the state that it is now. Of course, in the original state, there's so many other aspects that completely get ignored these days.
And for you, what's been the most common causes of these symptoms that people are experiencing as well, aside from the kind of overstimulation? Is there anything else that's happening in our modern world that's really pushing that through with people?
I feel that people now starting to get more aware of the developmental trauma. Yeah, it's not that immediate trauma that happened later in life, for example, an accident or an abusive relationship, which is also can be traumatic, and many times is. But it's a developmental trauma that people acquire growing up, and which shapes the shape of their body. It shapes how the energy is distributed in the body, where the tension lives, and it mostly affects the tension in the core of the body. The developmental trauma affects how we store the tension deep inside. And this what I feel bringing people into create some kind of change with themselves. They want to transcend a certain type of upbringing that created their personality structure. So somebody that starts to question, why am I the way I am, then they start to look deeper. What happened in first 7 years of life, from the time of being in the womb until the first 7, 8 to 10 years of life, where their body is really forming. So this is the interest that I feel more and more from the participants that are coming to the trainings, that they want to explore this aspect of working, and this is makes me very happy about it, because it's something that people try to address through just psychology, and it just doesn't work. It just staying on the level of the mind. You can completely dissect yourself on that level and know what's happening, but it does not take care of the tension that is stored in the body that's related to that developmental trauma.
And I notice more and more in my work that people are carrying a lot of birth trauma as well, and where birth has become a lot more of a medical event rather than a natural event. So there's a lot more pre-planning for cesareans and a lot more intervention, that it seems like babies just don't get even a very natural beginning, even if gestation has been kind of quite reasonable. But would you say that that relates into the breath work as well?
Absolutely. The birth trauma is the first trauma. This is what we experience the moment we come into the world. And if we come into the world in completely disconnected way, with bright lights, sudden temperature change, voices, and at a lot of the times baby being taken away from the mother right away, it puts a shock right away onto the person's life, that this is the first experience of the world that the person get when they come into it. So it's quite it leaves a everlasting imprint on them.
Yeah, so right at that point where they're just going to breathe for the first time ever, they've got all this chaos and confusion that's really unnatural.
Yes, absolutely.
So can you offer any simple suggestions for people to be able to better support themselves?
Number one suggestion that I can offer to people is to get comfortable with their felt sense. In our culture, people spend a lot of time, we talked a little bit about earlier, a lot of time disconnected from their physical body. So this numbness set in. So exploring this sense that we have sense of touch and hearing and sight and taste and others, but felt sense is a general experience, physical experience of ourselves without attaching any meaning to it. So getting comfortable with just sensing yourself one part at a time. Yeah, you can start with your feet or with your hands, with the external parts of your body, and then slowly move towards the inner parts of your body, the more of the interior. And another thing, being aware of your breath as you breathe, because most people do not breathe fully and deeply, and that is the reason they don't want to feel. Breath and emotional body are very much connected. The deeper we breathe, the more we start to feel. So another way to disconnect and to make our breath shallow. And what happens with that is that breath moves up into the upper portion of the lungs, and the rest of the lungs, the bottom portion, become atrophied. So there's not so much oxygenation in the blood, which actually causes disease later in life. Yeah. So for me, this the two things is using the felt sense, being aware of the breath, and also trying to find the resources. Knowing what your resources are, the external resources, which is places in the body that feel comfortable, where you can find safety. External resources, nature, company of friends, pets. These things also are extremely important because they connect us again to the felt sense. We need to use the felt sense to experience the resource. To get the energy of the resource, we have to again come back into the body and experience what makes this a resource, how we feel when we're using this resource.
And would you include into that things like healthy and uplifting scents and kind of good tastes and good sounds and things that allow us to just enjoy our bodies and our lives more?
Absolutely. These are the things that make us connect more to our physical form. And this is this is our anchor. This is where we are rooted.
And what do you think it is that is most detrimental to people in terms of how they impact on their breathing? What are they doing to themselves that really kind of stops them from breathing in a way that allows them to feel more?
It's really fear of emotional expression. This is what stops people's breath from flowing. In our society, vulnerability considered a weakness. I mean, actually, it is a strength. So people, to hide their vulnerability, they diminish their breath. So for me, it's what makes sense is coming back to breath so the emotions can open, and experiencing emotions to the fullest, and the breath starts to flow. So this is two things that complement each other, emotions and breath. The connection is undeniable. Yeah, so.
And do you feel, I mean, for me that seems like a very slow piece of evolution for us, that we've got all these advantages in modern living and all this awareness of so many different things, but the idea that it's not okay to be vulnerable, I mean, as an Englishman, that takes right back to British stiff upper lip. We don't discuss our problems, darling, we keep everything quiet.
Right. So yeah, and this is not only for British. This is in general. Men are a lot more prone to hold their emotions in than women, because we're by our conditioning, male conditioning, is we're not allowed to express the weaknesses or vulnerability. And this is like, for me, I find that this is not. It's just simply not the right way to go. You don't want to have a generation of men that completely cut off from their feeling and trying to be like all strong and tough, but this creates disconnect with themselves and cuts off from the breathing. So of course the strength and presence should be there, but this is not the strength of presence from trying to make yourself strong. It comes from really truly knowing yourselves, that we get this power from the earth that we walk on, the power of knowing who we are. That's what makes us strong, not trying to pretend that we got it all together.
And do you think that, I mean, for me, I think that this is something that is actually very unrecognized for men. I think we're still very much holding on to a feudal system of men are here to protect and provide. So to be able to be in that mind state, we have to suppress anything else, because nothing else is allowed for us as men. Because how can we be good warriors? How can we be good protectors if we have vulnerability, sensitivity, openness?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you, Ben. This is what actually the benefit of the work that we bring in is for man to start to drop this defense mechanism, this armoring, which is, first of all, is in the body. Protect your heart, make yourself strong, don't cry, but really supporting man in creating space where men feel it's safe to be vulnerable, to be open, and to connect from that space to others, that it creates such a relaxation. So much energy is wasted on keeping this tension in place in the body, on pretending that I got it all together, that I can be who others want me to be. So this creates an incredible amount of tension, physical tension, emotional tension, but it takes so much energy to keep it all. Imagine when this energy is available for other things. It can be available for sexuality, for play, for meditation, for dance, for creativity. Otherwise, it's just getting wasted and just holding this in place.
I mean, that sounds like the kind of world that I want to live in, that's for sure. And again, it sounds like it's going to turn the world into the kind of place that's going to be healthier as we pass it on to the generations that follow us. So tell us a little bit about the current training program as well for the biodynamic breathwork and trauma release.
Yes, the training is happening worldwide, and the training is divided into experiential workshops. It's a 2-year training where people have to complete 4 workshops, in-person workshops, and there are webinars, series of webinars that they have to complete on anatomy and physiology for breath workers, on Reiki and body type and personality types, on anatomy and physiology of trauma. Then they have to offer 100 practice sessions over the course of their training. So it's a very serious training. I strive to train facilitators at a certain standards. And first of all, people have to go through their own healing process. They have to address their own traumas. They have to create space within themselves to be able to support someone else. So this is really a foundation for someone who wants to become a biodynamic breathwork practitioner, is to go through their own process. And this happens in the course of the training. So the trainings are happening in many places in the world. It's happening in Poland, it's happening in US, in Bali, in China, in Russia. And the training is quite well-rounded. It's a beautiful, beautiful personal growth process and learning process at the same time.
Which is always good to hear as well, because I see way too many examples of training programs where people are learning techniques that dip into trauma and psychology and emotions, and they're just so ill-equipped to actually be able to deal with what could be arising for people. So it's good to hear that there's a good solid foundation of work and experience in there for people to learn. So with the year ahead of you now as well, what's coming up at the Institute that you're really excited about, and what would you like to tell us about that we can really get our teeth into?
Yes, now we're in the process of creating, actually splitting our training program into two segments. One would be experiential program, which is for people that just want to work on themselves, that come into the courses and want to address their traumas and want to go through this whole healing process. And another part of this training is for professionals, people that really want to take this modality, to work with it, to become the practitioner, the therapist in this field. So this is the biggest thing now as we speak. The website is being updated, and this whole program is being transformed online to presentation of the training program. And more invitations are coming from places where before it was rarely that I even seen participants from those countries, but now there was an invitation just came last week to teach this work in Rwanda, in Africa, one of the most traumatized places that we all know. This whole genocide went on there some years ago, and the population is really traumatized. So we will be teaching psychologists, a core group of psychologists, to work with people with this modality, and that's also incredibly exciting. And I'm very pleased to see how much the workshops growing with each workshop, more and more people coming in. This modality is getting known more and more and recognized in the world. So it gives me a lot of joy to know that people are really benefiting from this. And this is why I want to continue sharing it, because I see with my own eyes how people over the course of a 7 to 13-day workshop, they get completely transformed. There's something lifts from their appearance, something changes in the posture, the heart opens, and there's connections created with others. So I'm really excited to see how this work continues to grow all around the world. It's now happening pretty much on every continent.
That's really exciting stuff, and I think the fact that you've had that invitation into Rwanda is amazing. So if people would like to learn more about biodynamic breath and trauma release work, where can we send them?
Biodynamicbreathwork.com. It has a lot of information on this work. It has lots of videos. There's also lots of videos on YouTube channel, Biodynamic Breathwork and Trauma Release YouTube channel. And the schedule of all the courses is also on our website, biodynamicbreathwork.com, biodynamicbreath.com, sorry.
That's great. We'll make sure that we've got links in the description as well, so people will be able to link straight through to your site. So Giten, thank you so much for taking this time with us today. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Ben.